up, gamers? Welcome to another video with the Valeriuses. Today I want to talk about kingdom mistakes. The mistakes that kingdom leadership make that often will hurt or even sometimes destroy a good kingdom. Now, there's no particular order of these, and these are all just mine. Some will disagree with them, some will wholeheartedly agree, and some people might even have other things that they would like to add in. So, no particular order. I wanted to talk about forgetting the mid to low range players. And I'm talking about those players that are, in that 350 and below in power in the kingdom. And it's inevitable. Most kingdoms do concentrate on what they call their garrison and rally players. They're the big players, T5 players. But the thing is that in this game, as much as those people are incredibly important, like without good garrison commanders, without good garrison, good rally commanders, you won't do well in KVK. But you can have 20 or 30 great garrison and leaders, but if those are the only people online, you will not get anywhere in KVK. You really need really high numbers in the big battles to push back another kingdom, or even to keep yourself from being pushed back by one or two kingdoms. You need the high numbers. And as much as that 10 million, 8 million power player doesn't have a ton of troops, if you have 50, 60, 70 of those players online, they can reinforce. They can help the higher power players reinforce. If you can get 300 to 400 people online in a couple alliances, and they're garrisoning and filling rallies, and you're able to double rallies because you have sheer numbers online, you can do better than if you're meeting an opponent that just has their high power T5 players online. And not only that, the growth of the kingdom matters with those mid to low range players. If you can keep them engaged, if you can keep them in the fight, get them learning how to reinforce rallies, how to reinforce garrisons, to slip into the top fighting alliances, do their helping, be a part of it, and then slip out and move back to safety. That, if you can do that, you're ahead of most kingdoms. Because I watch, KVKs that I've been part of, and you just don't see that a lot. You don't see a lot of kingdoms being able to engage those low to mid range players. But it's important. How to do it? Everyone's going to have different opinions on it, but I think you start with engaging the leadership of the smaller alliances. That's where you're going to find most of the low to mid range players, is in the smaller alliances. And I think you need to engage that leadership crew. Have them come, get them to come into your big alliance, your fighting alliance, before you get to KVK. Have them, cycle in, be part of your fort hunting, be part of some bigger events, teach them how to teach their players. Because the more you can keep people engaged, the longer you can keep them in. And if you listen to Chisco, when they faced 846, they were holding their own on their big players, but where they got overwhelmed was the sheer number of players that 846 had. And I'd be surprised if they hadn't have done something early on in their kingdom to engage people, to keep them active, to keep them there. Because if you can't do that, if you can't engage those small to mid-range players, they will just either migrate or they will just abandon their accounts and start new accounts. So early in a kingdom, you can wait until you have the Lost Temple, until you can communicate as a whole to start doing it. But I would say don't wait. I would say once you start getting into Zone 2 and it becomes clear which alliances are going to be in Zone 3 and are going to be your fighting alliances, I say you start engaging the smaller alliances. Start finding ways to include them, find ways to have them be part of the kingdom and the plan moving forward for the kingdom. Because if you can, the more people you can keep engaged, the more people you can keep growing, the better off your kingdom will be. The next one I want to touch on is civil wars. I haven't seen a YouTuber, content YouTuber for Rock who hasn't touched on how detrimental to a kingdom a civil war is. It doesn't matter whether it's in KVK or if it's in between KVKs. When you have a civil war, you often will lose at least one alliance out of it, and sometimes you can lose an entire kingdom. I've seen that where the civil war lasted about a half hour, but the fallout lasted for months afterwards. People gave up on the kingdom, one entire alliance abandoned the kingdom, and then once that started happening, then other players would leave, and one or two here and there, and then it started being 7, 8, 9, 10, and then it started being 30, and what was a 5 alliance strong kingdom is now about an alliance and a half, and struggling to keep those players. So it is incredibly important that leadership understands that you just can't have a civil war. You just can't. It's one thing to have fighting over territory in the pre KVK for the first KVK. That's natural. Everyone's jockeying for position. But really once you start getting ready for those level 3 passes, you need to start coming together. You need to work together. Everyone has to pull in the same direction. If you're not, your kingdom could be in trouble. And I think if you actually get to the point of fighting, I think the writing is on the wall at that point. You need to have cooler heads. You need to understand that if you think you want to fight someone, another alliance, take a few hours. Step away. Have someone else step in until cooler heads can prevail. Until you can figure out how you can make it work. Because, you just can't have a civil war. Now, another one I want to touch on, and it's another thing I've seen recently done in a kingdom, in a newer kingdom. is not everyone's the same, and I understand you're gonna have rules that the entire kingdom will have to follow. Everyone will have to follow certain kingdom-wide rules. But what you really need to do is you need to understand especially when doing things, when trying to control the seed of a kingdom, is you need to understand that sometimes the rules for the top 300 to 350 players that really See, they're the ones that are going to determine your seed. So doing rules for them and doing rules for those that don't have the same effect on your seed, sometimes that's okay. This one kingdom, they turned off all of the titles for the entire kingdom because they didn't want the power to grow. They didn't want to get into Seed A. They wanted to be a Seed B kingdom. At that point, what they did is they really told all the players who had absolutely zero effect on the seed of the kingdom, they basically announced, we don't care about you. We don't want you to grow. You might as well go somewhere else. That's in effect what they did. And they did. I instantly saw within 4 or 5 days of that announcement, I saw, 3 whole alliances that were all those low level, 10 to 15 million power players just vanish. And I saw, others like 30, 40, players of that size just quit playing. I quit pulling towards the kingdom with that account and decided I was going to pull it out and use it as a farm somewhere else. It just didn't make sense. Now, I get what they were trying to do. Their goals were good. Getting, unless you're prepared with a huge number of whales to compete to be in an Imperium, you don't want to start getting into that A and Imperium level quickly, by KVK 2. So I get where they wanted to stay B and remain a competitive, relevant kingdom. I understand that. They just didn't think of the consequences. And you really have to think about that. Like, not everyone is the same. Now the next one is a pet peeve of mine. Every single kingdom does it to some degree, and that's limiting where gathering can occur, especially once you control the lost temple. When I was in 1837 leadership with U837 leading into, right from Zone 1, we did early on limit who could gather in our territory. And we did, knock out players for gathering in our territory early on. But I quickly realized that wasn't the way to make allies. That wasn't the way to keep players playing. So, as much as we had the announcement up, don't gather in our territory, I had early on told our people, don't just attack them first. Don't kill their troops just to knock them out of our territory. Once they've already gathered 80% of the node, the damage is done. Killing their troops, costing them resources that they have to heal their troops, doesn't help that smaller player that's not in your alliance, doesn't help your alliance. It just doesn't help the kingdom overall. So I think what is better is if you understand that what benefits the kingdom the most. Yeah, you get that resource bonus for the alliance for gathering in your own territory. You do benefit your alliance more. The individual players gather faster in your own territory. I get all that. But in the long run, if you're setting your gatherers before you're logging off for 3-4 hours at a time, it doesn't matter how fast you gather. Your gatherers are long done, whether they're in or out of territory, whether they're in someone else's territory or not. Yes, encourage players to gather within your territory, especially if you're online. I get that, but in the end, making allies, working all towards a common goal is more important than the sanctity of your territory. again, the 1837 example was, you know, there was an alliance that just out of the top 5 alliances controlling the temple when we were first in Zone 3, one alliance out of the 5 didn't want people gathering in their territory. And it led to conflict lots. There was constantly people arguing about, they killed my troops, costing me, resource, and I want the resource. But yeah, we were, as leadership, we were constantly dealing with that, and it just wasn't necessary. There's no point to it. And the last one I want to cover, and it's by no means the last thing that the last issue that kingdoms make, but it's the last one I want to cover, and that's massive migrations to KVK2. I get that you get some T5, especially newer T5 players that don't have a lot of the especially free to play, don't have a lot of the Season of Conquest commanders to compete in Season 4 and beyond in Season of Conquest, and want to go back to KVK2, and they want to be the dominant player in the fight, and they want to work up their commanders and save gold heads and be more prepared for Season of Conquest. So I get that, but if you're going into KVK2 and you accept a pile of big T5 players, you can in a hurry find yourself competing against kingdoms that you just have no hope of winning a fight against. And then that's a different problem, because if you're not being at least competitive in the fight in KVK, I mean, you can just as quickly as you got those players, you can lose them. And then you are, you're behind the 8 ball, moving forward, especially into Season of Conquest. And I get sometimes these migrations can get out of hand on you. People can sneak in, or what you thought was going to be one level, you ended up being another level. Mistakes happen. I mean, I get it. But there are some kingdoms that, like, everyone that has a friend or has a bigger account somewhere, they let everyone in. And suddenly you have 50 or 60, 80 to 100 million farm accounts that don't participate in the fight. And there's a difference between not participating in the fight and the fight timing didn't work out. There's a difference. And you'll be able to tell by how active that player is. If that player is incredibly active and they're online and they're out on the front lines, there's just not much fighting going on, that's different. Like, I mean, you got to make some exception to that. I guess that goes back to the not everyone's the same thing. But you really got to be right on top of those migrations. Really, as soon as KVK1, as soon as you're about the, starting to get into Zone 5 of KVK1, you really got to think that those migrations are coming up, and they're a month off, and be prepared for them. Put together 4, 5, 6 volunteers who are outside of the council, whose job that's their only job is to deal with the migrations. If you're the king of the kingdom, you've got so much to think about that you really need to focus on the fighting in that time, but you need to take care of it. So get volunteers to take care of it. Again, I guess that goes back to including other people too. That'll help in that regards. Maybe put, people from that you trust that are in charge of those, 17, 18, 19, 20th ranked alliances. If you've included them early and you've had them learning how things are run, you can get them to help the kingdom. Put them in charge of that. Include them. And that'll help that as well. But keep those migrations down. Keep it in mind that that it's your top 300 that are going to make a difference in your seed, and make sure you're not bringing in 300 T5 accounts, because you'll get into over your head pretty quick. You know, really control those numbers, really be careful. And don't be so concerned about every player coming in has to have 1 billion kills or 1.5 billion kills or something. Sometimes those are KVK2 surfers. And they look like they have fabulous stats, and they're going to come in and be great fighters for you for a KVK2 and then gone. Or a KVK2, 3, and maybe 4 and gone. You know, look seriously at, you know, how active someone is. And sometimes those players with 100 or 200 million kill points, sometimes they might be a good player to bring in. But I think more than just the stats, when you're doing those migrations, so you don't have that massive migration, don't be afraid to interview people. Don't be afraid to get on a voice chat with them. Talk to them. Learn more about them. You'll benefit from that, and you'll slow down those massive migrations, and I think your kingdom will be better for it. If you think of anything more you'd like to add to this topic, leave comments in the chats. I would love to hear it, both on this and on the video chat, video comments section, or on the Discord. Look me up on Discord, the Valeriuses, and I'll have a link to that in the description of this video. Subscribe, please. Help me out. You know, you benefit too when you subscribe, and it doesn't cost you anything. Like the videos. Let's keep this growing. Everyone benefits. Thanks. Bye. And enjoy your gaming.